Anyway, thanks so much for joining today. I'm gonna go ahead and get us started and have us look at our agenda. So first thing is to save a little bit of time, we've gone to where everybody can update their own information in their profile on Zoom, and I'll show you a little clip about how to do that. But if you want to put your name and your title and your agency there, that would help. You can also pop it in the chat as just a way of helping this group connect and know who each other is. We always prefer to see faces, so if you're able to turn your camera on, that's great. It's a way to help us connect in this new virtual setting, since we can't do in-person meetings anymore. We understand sometimes that's not a possibility, but if you are able to join with a camera, that would be great. We'll go over some announcements and updates from the medical home portal, have some time for brainstorming. Our case presentation today is going to be by Ingrid Contreras from Wasatch Pediatrics, and then our main presentation today is on early psychosis education, and we have Jessica Makin here from the Services for Transition Age Youth in the Office of Substance Abuse and Mental Health, and then hopefully at the end of the meeting we'll have some time for networking and wrap up as well. So with welcome and introductions, again, if you're not familiar with how to change your name in the Zoom platform, if you go to your little profile box, you should be able to see a rename option. And if you put in your first name, last name, your role, and then the agency you work with, then as people look through the list of participants here, they can kind of start to identify who's who with which agency and be able to connect outside of this meeting as well. For some announcements, we wanted to make you aware of the upcoming pediatric echo sessions. So on the docket, we have one later today on Utah outdoor sports injuries, and then there are a couple others coming up. The Autism 101 series is still happening, and then there'll be one on POTS on October 4th, and then unique equipment for unique individuals on the 11th, so that should be a really interesting one as well. And it's linked here. This will all go out in the notes as well, so don't feel like you need to write frantically or anything like that. But as always, anyone's welcome to join our pediatric echo sessions. There is CME available for those as well. And then for updates from the medical home portal, we've had quite a bit of content updated since our last meeting. So here's a list of some of the updated clinical content. We've got dental and oral health screenings. I'm not going to try to say that next one. GAMT deficiency, newborn transition respiratory screening tool, the POTS diagnosis module, screening for sleep problems, and treating diaper rash. And then in addition, we've also had quite a bit of family content updated in this last little bit as well. Pages on adaptive cycling, adaptive driving, education, FAQ, education in schools, finding quality information, forms for education from early intervention to preschool, life transitions with your child, and recreation activities. So again, these are all topics that you can find on the Medical Home Portal website. And if you're interested in learning more about those, we just encourage you to go to the website and search any one of these key terms as well. It should pull up all the content related to these topics. All right, so let's jump into brainstorming next. Does anybody have any difficult cases they want to bring to this meeting? Questions or barriers you're working through, ideas, new resources? All right, well, it looks like everybody's going to be quiet today. So we'll go ahead and jump into our case presentation from Ingrid.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ingrid Contreras. I am a medical home coordinator at Wasatch Pediatrics Summit office, the office in Park City. And I am a bilingual person. I speak Spanish and English. And up in Park City, we have pretty, I would say, big population of Spanish-speaking people. And so our clinic sees a lot of people who speak Spanish and people that just came to the United States, for lack of a better term. And so we find that when we have those cases, they need a lot of help, and we need to be able to provide the help for them. So I wanted to talk to you about a case that I had, or I keep having. We're still helping this family. I'm gonna name our baby. She's still a baby, Lily. Just changing the name for HIPAA reasons. So Lily is a premature baby, or was a premature baby. She was born at 33 weeks, and she spent about a month in the NICU. Her mother was a 16-year-old mom at that time, and at the hospital they had a lot of concerns that the mom was part of like a sex trafficking, part of that, and there were a lot of concerns for this mom because she would show up to the hospital on her own. And the mom and the dad wouldn't talk too much, wouldn't volunteer a lot of information. So it was very concerning right from the beginning. And the hospital was also concerned about the ability for this family to take care of a baby. So the baby was born with a significant heart murmur, and these parents needed to follow up with the cardiologist at Primary Children's. And so when they came to our office, we saw the baby, and we talked to the parents. There wasn't a lot of good communication with them. There was just a lot of like, yes, no, that kind of situation. So I, seeing that, what I did was try to be like closer to them, and I gave them my personal cell phone number, and I continued to check on them throughout all of these months that I've known them. It turns out they didn't have a baby car seat. They borrowed one so that they could be able to get the baby home. So they had a lot of needs. They didn't have the car seat. They didn't have diapers. They had very few clothes for their baby. Dad was trying as much to get to work using the bus in Park City. They were staying with a family member for a little bit, then they went to a different place with another family member, and just a lot of housing instability. We have public transportation up here in Park City. We have High Valley Transit that has buses, and there's also a micro where you can request a ride through an app. And many times they are able to give you a ride right from your home to like a medical facility or wherever you need to go. So that is a pretty cool resource that we have up here in Park City. And it doesn't work all the time. in every case. So they also had these transportation issues. Sometimes they couldn't bring their baby to appointments. And then because of the language barrier, they felt very insecure about asking for help. Like we have all of these resources, like Medicaid provides transportation, but they didn't feel confident enough to dial the number, give all of the information, even though the recordings are in Spanish too. They just felt like they couldn't do it. So that's where I was able to help too. We arranged transportation through Modivcare, the Medicaid transportation for them, and I have been doing that pretty regularly for them. Transportation to primary children's for their cardiology appointments, and transportation to our office. And mom had a C-section, and so it seemed like she was having a really hard time with everything that was happening with the baby, she was in a lot of pain. They were very isolated. So it was a challenging time to trying to, like, I would get them a ride to come to her office for an appointment, but then she would, I don't know if she was scared or I don't know what was going on, but she would tell me, oh, I'm not feeling good, I don't think I can go. So we had to cancel appointments many times and then rebook the transportation many times. The same for appointments at primary children's. So at some point, the medical providers from our office and also from primary children's were concerned that these parents were not going to be able to provide the care that the baby needed. I think there were a few calls made to DCFS, but nothing came out of that. So these parents just kept taking care of their baby and doing what they could to bring the baby to appointments. And it was also the winter time, which was probably challenging for them too, with all the snow that we got this last season. We made sure that we provided all of the resources that they needed, that we could connect them in our area. For mom, there is People's Health Clinic, and they see patients that don't have any kind of insurance. There is Holy Cross Ministries. They have different services. One of them is parents as teachers. So we connected them with that. We made sure that they were connected with WIC. We made sure that they knew about the Christian Center, the food bank, rent assistance programs that they have with the Christian Center. There is another nonprofit called Gabriel Project, and they also help moms take care of their babies with anything that they need. So we made sure that they knew about that. Early intervention program, and just supporting them with formula. We get formula in our office from the formula reps. So, and since she was a preemie, she's taking this special formula. So we help them with that too. And then the Park City Childhood Alliance is also, every month they ask us if we have patients that need diapers and wipes, and we're able to ask for diapers and wipes for our patients. So we have also been trying to help with that. So at some point, I gave all of these resources to these parents, and I realized they were not following up with any of them, which was really hard for me to accept. And I kept kind of pushing on those things, like kind of reminding them that there's all of these great resources for them. But at that point, I think it was too much for them. So I kind of slowed down on my reminders to them, and just slow down that so that they could feel more comfortable with me. I didn't want to lose the communication with them. They ended up moving to Salt Lake because Park City is extremely expensive for everyone, I think. And so they moved to Salt Lake. And that is that's a different setting for me. I don't know all of the resources that are available in Salt Lake. I started by trying to have them go to one of our offices for pediatric care for another office in Salt Lake. They didn't want to do that. They still wanted to come to Park City. So, and since Modif Care, the transportation from Medicaid is so, it's not designed for urgent care. Like if the baby would get sick, I wouldn't be able to dial Modif Care and say, bring the patient to our office, because you have to have like 3 days in advance to call and ask them to bring them to the office. So we kind of, I talked to the parents and I said, well, let's identify what's around you. Like if the baby were to get sick or one of you were to get sick, where is the nearest place that you can go? So we identified like a hospital and urgent care, and they had all of that information. I tried to connect them with parents as teachers in Salt Lake, with early intervention or DDI Vantage. And yeah, I tried to connect them with those resources, but there was a point where Dad lost his job because the job was up here in Park City and he didn't have a ride. And then there were too many people living in the apartment, and they were about to be kicked out. So they were about to become homeless too. So I tried to find resources in case they didn't have a place to stay. I think I gave them a few resources that I found online for shelter for families. I don't recall exactly the names, but I did find out find a couple of them. I gave it to them. I lost communication with them for a while because turns out they didn't have enough money to keep a cell phone line. So they couldn't call me or text me, and they were just able to text me through WhatsApp, which at least we had that. And then I got a call from parents as teachers and from DDI Vantage saying we cannot get a hold of this person. And I was telling them it's because they don't have a cell phone line right now, but they can communicate through WhatsApp. But I don't think a lot of people are familiar with WhatsApp, so they were like, okay, let us know if you hear from them. So I'm gonna have to make that connection again with them. And so now they are doing better. Dad has a job, they moved to a new place. And they will be coming for the 9-month appointment with their doctor. And she seems to be growing well. They have been showing me pictures of the baby. So I'm glad that they, little by little, they are doing better. And maybe at this point, I will be able to talk to them more about the resources that are available that can benefit their baby and themselves. And that's my case.
Thank you, Ingrid, for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
You've wrapped up a lot of typical needs, but it sounds like you've been working with this family for a long period of time. And are they still located in Salt Lake at the moment?
Yes, in Midvale.
Okay, so this is maybe a good opportunity too to kind of brainstorm with this group if there are any other current needs for the family, what those resources would be in that area, since we have a lot of care coordinators throughout the state on this call. I don't know if you have any off the top of your head of particular resources you're looking for, but
I think if you guys know about any transportation help, I know for some people, and I think this would be for them too, using the public transportation is difficult sometimes. So I don't know if there's another resource for transportation.
For transportation, have they tried a lot of people don't know about the transit app. It helps you navigate the public transportation system. I mean, I use it to get places since I don't have a car at the moment, and I know I wouldn't be able to get by without the app. So, do you know if they've tried using that?
No, but I can talk to them about that when I see them. I'm gonna see them today. Thank you. Yeah.
Ingrid, are they reestablished any early intervention? Have they reestablished that relationship, or are they still not having early intervention?
I don't think they have. And I'm gonna talk to them about that too, because that's one of the programs that I really would like the baby to benefit from. Yeah, I will.
I also, I mean, I don't know if they're willing, or if they have, I mean, home visiting would also be another service that could go into the home. And then early intervention, yourself and home visiting could work as a team to facilitate the very best options for service and really do hands-on care in the home, like with between home visiting and early intervention.
So home visiting is a separate program?
Yeah. I'll look for the office in your area and send you that information.
Okay. Is it through the health department, or
It
is it?
depends on their area, and looks like somebody's on it already on the screen. So it could be through the Salt Lake Health Department, or it could be like an individual program, but
whoops, sorry, I was muted. I was just pulling it up on the medical home portal while you were talking, Carrie. But this is the information we have about it on the medical home portal, which takes you to the Office of Home Visiting website, where you could probably get the local contact information. And we include all of these resources in our notes that go out after the meeting too, with links to everything too. So you don't have to feel like you need to scramble to write everything down. We'll make sure all the resources are included, but it's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Ingrid, with us. I think that's a really great case example. And I love too how you said, like, initially when you worked with the family, you were thinking of all of these resources that they could take advantage of, but they weren't ready maybe for all of those. And so I think that's something that's really important as care coordinators to remember, is like, even if we have all of the resources available and know about everything, it's really working with the family at where they're at in that particular moment as well, and just trying to kind of slowly coach them along, which it sounds like you've done a really great job doing. So does anyone else have any questions for Ingrid, and or did this kind of spark any other brainstorming ideas or case examples or questions that the group wants to bring forward?
Hi, this is Ilse de Koeier from Help Me Grow Utah. You can also, for longer care coordination, always connect with Help Me Grow, and we can do developmental screenings and follow up with family in Spanish. So for the long term, that might be an option to help them find resources where they are located.
Yes. Thank you.
Anyone else have any other, this could be related to this case or different as well, just questions or announcements or things you've heard about that you want to share with the group?
Hi, Athena,
Heather,
and
yeah.
everyone. Good morning. This is Heather Carlson from the Integrated Services Program. I
Yeah.
had a family. We applied for beds because they've been sleeping on the floor for years. There's a program called Sleep in Heavenly Peace. I don't know if it's on the MedHome portal. I couldn't find it on there.
It is.
But they have some locations in Utah. And they were able to, they applied for that and they got beds last night, new pillows, all new bedding. And so it was really exciting for them. Oh, there it is. Good job. I just couldn't find it. But they do have locations. They have a location in like Logan, Salt Lake area, Richfield, Northern Utah. So anyway, just so people know.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. That is a great resource. And we have it listed as a national listing, but yes, they have local chapters. If you click on this link, it'll take you to their website that shows all the local chapters throughout the US. Anyone else have any resources you want to share or announcements? All right, well, we'll go on to our main presentation for today, which is going to be from Jessica Makin from the Services for Transition Age Youth from the Office of Substance Use and Mental Health. And she's going to talk to us today about early psychosis education.
Awesome. First of all, can you hear me okay? Great. I normally work remotely from home, but I'm at the office today, and you just never know when you hook up to new equipment how things are going to work out. So I'm really excited to be here today with you all. I see a few familiar faces from Health and Human Services and other folks I've interacted with. So thank you for letting me be here. As Athena said, I am from the Office of Substance Use and Mental Health. I should have sent this to you, Michelle, but I'm going to put a link in the chat just so folks have a reference point for kind of what Health and Human Services look like. Mostly sending that to you because I know that our systems are complicated and there's a lot going on. And with Health and Human Services consolidation, a lot of things have changed. So I'm putting a few links in the chat just to kind of give you a reference point. So the first one is our current org chart for Health and Human Services. The second one is just the office website for substance use and mental health. And then that third link is a link to just an overview of the way that substance use and mental health is organized within the state as far as kind of how the areas are divided. I know everyone's systems are slightly different as far as how they're organized, but just to kind of give you a little reference point for where we are at with our system right now. So our office, Substance Use and Mental Health, provides oversight for what this map is right here that you're seeing to the local mental health system, which is generally, for most of the systems, it's county-led, I would say is the best way to put it. And as you can see from the map, there's several counties that are smushed together into one area because of population and need and all of that fun stuff. And also it's an interactive map. So if you are looking for service providers in those specific areas, you can click on the area that you're in and it will show you who the service provider is in your area. Just as a resource for you all to be able to have options to look up mental health services in your areas around the state. Any questions about that? We can go to the next slide, Michelle. Thank you. Please interrupt me and ask questions as we go along. It's easier for me to answer questions in the moment, and I feel like sometimes it's easier to ask questions in the moment because then I'll say more things and then you'll have more questions. And so feel free to interrupt me, raise your hand, or just unmute. I'm pretty casual, so yeah, don't feel like you're interrupting and it will annoy me or anything like that. I'm happy to answer questions about the work that we're doing in our office. Yeah, go ahead and go to the next slide, Michelle. So when we're looking at psychosis, just to give you an overview, and these are things that you can Google and look up, or symptoms that you may know. Early psychosis symptoms occur on a kind of wide spectrum to very mild to severe, and can include a variety of these things on this list. And of course, this list is not all inclusive. I would say that some of the challenges with these symptoms is that for transition age youth, which I kind of categorize as between the ages of 14 and 26, is the larger age range. Some of these are just part of being a teenager, right? Like your teenager sleeps a lot, or they eat a lot and then they don't eat very much. Or so some of these things are kind of tricky for this age range because sometimes they're part of being a teenager and sometimes they are signs of mental health needs, right? So that is why with these symptoms, making sure that folks within the physical health and mental health, behavioral health communities understand why these may be concerning for parents, and knowing that we have specific screening tools and assessments to understand what is the kind of origin of these symptoms, and how can we address them. We also have to rule out some substance-induced psychosis, which is a larger conversation, but often related to cannabis use and other substances. But we do have specific screening tools to figure out what is the origin of these symptoms and how are they related to what's going on with the young person at the time. We can go to the next slide, Michelle. I really like this visual because it demonstrates the importance of early identification and intervention when we are looking at mental illness overall for young people, but particularly with early psychosis. This transition age youth age range is when the majority of mental illness symptoms will crop up for people. And that's why it's so important why we intervene during this time frame. I like to remind people that, think back to when you were between the ages of 14 and 26. For some of us, it's going to be a long time ago. And it's a really challenging time, right? Even if you have safe and healthy family, you have, good experiences in high school and college, you have all of these positive things in your life, it's still really challenging. And then factor in for young people when they have trauma, when there are barriers to treatment, when there are, family history of mental illness. There's a variety of things that impact during that time range. So really important to consider those things. And this early identification, you can see that little dotted line on the image. When we identify early, so that dotted line is more so referring to like clinical high risk for psychosis, which we'll talk about a little bit more. When we can identify early and intervene, we can mitigate symptoms and improve functioning across the lifespan so that the young person's functioning doesn't kind of go down that slope and continue down in that process. Now, clinical high risk for psychosis is a newer focus area and newer focus for SAMHSA as far as grants and things like that. But still, even if you catch a young person after they've had a first episode of psychosis, within the first 24 months following that, you see that little onset of first episode. If you're catching young people during that time frame and getting them treatment and support, we can still mitigate symptoms and give that young person an opportunity to live a healthy life, go to school, have a job, have healthy relationships, and not get to that place where we are looking at serious persistent mental illness. So catching that early serious mental illness, providing treatment, getting young people the support that they need so that they can live a full and healthy life, which is a really cool thing about this early psychosis work, because it really can change the trajectory of the life of the young people that we work with. We can go ahead and go to the next slide, Michelle. So our program here in Utah is called the PrEP program. So it's Prevention and Recovery of Early Psychosis. Ming Wang, who was my supervisor and recently retired, some of you may have worked with her over the years, worked with this population kind of from the start. So we received funding through Mental Health Block Grant in 2016 or so. There was a 5% set aside required for focusing on first episode psychosis. Then it was increased to a 10% set aside to work with first episode psychosis. So we had some pilot programs and then expanded those services to multiple sites across the Wasatch Front. And I will talk about those specific sites. And then in 2018, Clinical High Risk for Psychosis grant came through as an opportunity through SAMHSA. We applied for that and got that. And then we also just started our second round last year. So we're finishing up our first year of our second round of the Clinical High Risk for Psychosis. So that is that early identification and intervention before a young person who has had a first episode. The important thing with these teams is that the treatment team that provides both first episode and clinical high risk services are the same team. So then that way, if a young person is coming in under kind of that clinical high risk category, and then they end up having a first episode, it's still the same team that is providing those services so that we can make sure we have that continuity of care. So if they're not having a first episode, they're in crisis, and then we're trying to transition them to another team, which is not going to go well. So that way we keep all the staff the same, the young people are working with the same folks, and it creates more continuity and support for the young person and the family. One of the things that we're really working toward is creating some sustainability with these programs so that we can continue forward with CHRP without SAMHSA funding. SAMHSA funding is wonderful and I'm grateful for it. And there's also anyone who has facilitated federal funding know that there's a lot of fun documentation that you have to do and paperwork. And we'd love to be able to provide this clinical high risk services more widely with being able to bill Medicaid and have other options for services, which they are making progress in that area and are advocating for additional options and things like that for Medicaid billing. So we're moving in the right direction. We can go ahead and go to the next slide, Michelle. So the specific model that we use for this service is the coordinated specialty care model. So it's recovery-oriented treatment for first episode psychosis and clinical high risk. The goal of the model is really shared decision-making with the young person, with their family and natural supports, and with the team of specialists who work with the client to create a treatment plan that works for them. It's a time-limited program for 2 years with the goal to pass off the young person to less intensive services that will help them maintain their health. And also knowing that, like, if they need additional support, that the team is there for the future. But it's a really interesting model. So we can go to the next slide and we can talk a little more about the options for services. Coordinated specialty care options, there are a lot of options, which is a really great thing about coordinated specialty care. But the clients do not have to access all the services at once. So if they come into the program and they just want therapy and case management because that's all that they are open to and that's all they are willing to do, great, we will do that. And continuing to offer those other services to them as they are ready for it. So it's, I would say, a little bit different than programs that I've worked in the past. because there's really not that expectation of like, you have to do ABC to remain in this program, or we're not going to be able to serve you. The team is definitely working harder than the client to some extent, because of the need of the client, of the family, of the natural supports. We have found that the engagement phase for the young person and their family can often take about 6 months before the client and the family are fully engaged. So a young person may get a referral, someone may do a prime screening, which is like a short 12 question screener. They'll do, the SIPS assessment, which is the structured interview for psychosis risk syndromes, assess kind of where they fit in the FEP, CHRP spectrum, get enrolled in services, and then not really engage for a little bit of time. And so the team has to continue to reach out to the family, reach out to the young person, go out to the house. There's a lot of work on the team's end to get them engaged in services on the front end. So that is different, I would say, than other programs that I've worked in. But there is that high need, and there is that, oftentimes family, even if the young person hasn't had a first episode and they maybe haven't been in crisis, quote unquote, clinical high risk, there's still some concerning mental health symptoms. And that is hard for families to deal with. And so even with the opportunity to engage in services, it is not always easy for families to do that, because oftentimes, there's other kids in the home, there's other things going on with the family, that they want to be able to focus on the young person, and it's also really hard. So it does take some time to engage in that process. We can go to the next slide. So the prep team includes all of these folks on the team. The team can have a variety of kind of team compositions, but these roles are the expected roles within coordinated specialty care. And every site is a little bit different, depending on kind of the population size, the need of the community, the program itself, or the agency itself. So, for example, we are building a team right now at Volunteers of America. It's a newer site. So the program manager coordinator is also acting as the therapist. As the team builds, like our site at Wasatch Behavioral Health, the program manager is just doing program management, and then they have multiple therapists to meet with all the clients. So there's some flexibility as you build a team. We can go to the next slide, Michelle. Team composition, like I was saying, every site does a little bit different. So some sites have had like a therapist case management role combination. Because some of the sites have very specific child teams and adult teams, they'll have a therapist from either both teams on the coordinated specialty care team, the prep team. We've had prescribers who are folks that work in-house. We have some that have contracted to come and work with the team. IPS is the individual placement and supported education and employment. Some sites have a full IPS team operating to fidelity, and they assign a staff to the coordinated specialty care group. Others have their case managers trained in IPS practices, and they utilize those principles. So there's some flexibility as we build teams, which is nice. And understanding that every community is going to be a little bit different as far as incidence rate of clinical high risk for psychosis, early psychosis, and also resources within the organization. We can go to the next one. Occupational therapy is a component of this program that is newer for our mental health system in Utah. So the occupational therapists that we had within our local mental health system at Wasatch Behavioral Health in their prep program was the first occupational therapist that we've had in the local mental health system. It's not Medicaid reimbursable, which makes it a little bit tricky. We have to get a little creative with our braided funding to provide this service as part of the prep team. It has been a really valuable service to have for helping young people, being able to have them, the occupational therapist assess the young person's daily functioning and create some plans for how they can improve their daily functioning, adjust their living spaces to improve the daily functioning. It's been a really great opportunity to have that service on the team. We have gotten a little creative with the staffing, so Weber Human Services and Davis Behavioral Health share an occupational therapist at those two sites because they're in neighboring counties. And then there's enough work for the one full-time occupational therapist between the two sites. So we've gotten creative with that as well. But it's been a great opportunity to have additional kind of support and evidence for folks in the Utah OT Association to have more justification for the potential for occupational therapists to be qualified mental health providers. So that's a conversation we've been having with them as well. We can go to the next one, Michelle. Community education. This is a big piece of working to teach people about clinical high risk for psychosis and first episode psychosis. Clinical high risk for psychosis, probably more so. First episode psychosis, oftentimes young people will have been hospitalized because they're in crisis. That can be easier to catch, relatively speaking. Clinical high risk is more kind of a smattering of symptoms that are harder to identify. And community education is an important part of that conversation because schools and primary care doctors are the folks that most families will go to when their young person is having an issue, or, particularly with schools, teachers, school staff will see if a young person's behavior has changed more often than other folks will. So we really had to shift a little bit within our mental health systems to make sure that we are doing community education, that we're talking about clinical high risk, that we're talking about first episode psychosis and access to those services. For most of our local mental health systems, they are, especially in smaller communities, they may be kind of the main shop in town. And so there hasn't always been a practice of educating folks on what the services are, because they're the main place that people come to, right? And so we've really had to increase and improve our capacity for educating the community on early psychosis. And we've done that in a few ways. And I would say that probably our biggest challenge has been educating primary care offices because they are so busy and the teams are doing so much, and it can be challenging. We've made some progress in a couple of our sites, but it's definitely something that we're still working on as far as making sure that we are educating folks within that primary care field. And definitely done presentations at conferences and just trying to talk about early psychosis as much as we can all the time. So that we make sure that people know where to go when they need support. On my end, I'm also working on that to create a logo and kind of some consistent branding across the programs so that as we build, we can have a consistent visual for folks so that they know what the services are. Right now we have 4 sites. We're working on a 5th, but we have the goal of making sure that those services are available across the state. As I know we're all aware, with the rural space that we have across the state, it can get a little tricky in getting creative in how we serve those areas. But our technical assistance provider is the Early Assessment and Support Alliance, and they operate out of Oregon, and their rural space, urban space kind of combo is very similar to ours. And so they've been really helpful in looking at how we can expand to more of our rural spaces in the state. We can go to the next slide, Michelle. When we're looking at building capacity, we have worked on, and I know this is really small, so I don't expect you to be able to read it. We are working on a workflow document so that we can lay out each role and each kind of service area and what is included in that, so that as we build new sites, they have more information as to what we've learned as we've built programs across the state, and resources and tools that we can use as we build new sites. And we can go to the next one, Michelle. So our program sites currently are Weaver Human Services, Davis Behavioral Health, Wasatch Behavioral Health, and Volunteers of America. The VA hospital information on there is just kind of as an FYI. They've adjusted how they are serving folks who have had a first episode of psychosis so that they can intervene earlier after a veteran has been hospitalized. And I had to kind of shift my thinking around that because I know when I think of veterans, I think of older adult. But there are definitely veterans that fall into this transition age youth category that may have had a first episode of psychosis. And so the team at the VA has made some shifts in when they're intervening, when a veteran has come in and has had an episode of psychosis. So that's progress in that area as well. And that is all I have. I feel like I talked a lot. So questions I can answer for you about this work. Or I did such a great job that there's no questions, which I know isn't true, because there's always things. And also, if you don't want to ask questions right now, you can ask questions later and email me. Go ahead, Athena.
Well, I just had a question. You said there were 4 sites currently working on the 5th, but with plans to reach the rural states. Do you have any idea of what that might look like at this point in time, or?
I am working on it. we tried in the past to expand to 4 corners, and we weren't able to kind of get things off the ground. That's the primary thing I'm working on with our technical assistance provider is how do I create a solid pitch, which sounds weird, but really talking to folks about the importance of this and bringing in data around incidence rates as we pull data from kind of psych hospitalizations and areas that folks are coming from, and diagnoses kind of from our larger system where we pull the data from the electronic health record systems of the local mental health system. Yeah, some of it is folks' willingness to do the work. I think that as we move toward better options for particularly a bundled rate, which is something that was mentioned in the behavioral health master plan, is looking at bundled rates for coordinated specialty care. I think that will help. That tends to be the trickiest part. Even though we have funding through mental health block grant, through SAMHSA, it's not a lot of funding, and it makes it kind of tricky in that regard. So I'm working on my plan. I know that's not a good answer, but yeah. Any other questions I can answer for the group? And you're always welcome to reach out to me if you think of something later or you want to talk specifically about a specific area of the state. I'm happy to chat more about it.
Has there been much work done to, I guess, like, what's the communication look like back to like a primary care office if somebody is involved in the PrEP team?
There's a couple of ways that we do that. One of the best ways, Davis Behavioral Health will do, get a release of information and all the sharing information documents, but they will do like a summary sheet of the client's meds and all the things that are going on with them when the client goes to their primary care provider, so that provider knows what's going on with the young person's medication, with their mental health, all of that. That seems to be the most effective way to improve that communication, because the medication piece can get, it's a little tricky. We definitely work toward getting young people to utilize injectables when appropriate, just because it's a little easier than daily meds. But yeah, that kind of printout and summary of current status going from either the nurse or the prescriber to the primary care provider tends to be the best way to keep that communication ongoing. And I will add too, if you have folks in your offices, whether that's your care coordination teams or whatever your internal verbiage is for that, that would like to learn more about this, particularly if you're in the Wasatch Front, or even outside of the Wasatch Front, but I can connect you to your local prep teams so that they can come in and talk about referral pathways and all of that, so that you have more access and information. And yeah, we can talk to you about the Prime Screener, because that's a pretty straightforward tool, and that's one that's just easily Googleable. Also on Wasatch Behavioral Health's website, and I will put that in the chat, they recently updated their website with a lot of great information about early psychosis. There's an excellent TED Talk video from Dr. Ryan Melton that talks about early psychosis. But they have on their website, you can actually download the Prime screening tool. So if you want to take a look at that, we got permission from the creator of the tool to have that on their site so that folks can download that. It's a really fast and easy screening tool to assess kind of what's going on with the young person, and if you need to refer to an early psychosis program for more in-depth screening. But their website's really great. The recent updates have been awesome, and a lot of great information about what psychosis is and coordinated specialty care. Yeah, theirs is really awesome. Any other questions I can answer for you? I feel like you made it too easy, everyone, if you didn't ask any hard questions. I'm grateful. It's still early in the morning, so thank you, but happy to answer any questions at any time.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
And sorry if I didn't hear it, but if a person qualifies for this program, what does the insurance part look like? Like, does insurance, do you guys take insurance for these, or like
depends on the site and kind of how they process insurance. Because we have specific funding for these programs, we take folks with or without insurance, or we'll work with folks to get signed up for Medicaid if they're eligible. Some of the sites will bill insurance if they have that capacity internally, but because we have specific funding, it's not dependent on insurance or Medicaid or anything like that. We will take folks that are eligible for the program no matter what.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Jessica, let me ask this then. So an extension of Ingrid's, is there a citizenship requirement to participate?
No.
Okay.
Good question. Yeah. Yeah, and we do, kind of to your point, Eric, since we do have a lot of Spanish speaking folks, several of the sites do have Spanish speaking staff. For the sites that don't, we make sure that we connect to translation services. I know that that can be a little tricky within the mental health environment because it's not everything translates well, and making sure that we are addressing stigma in the process of translating, because there's cultural aspects, there's all of these things. So we do work and encourage the teams to have a Spanish speaker and, you know, hopefully a native Spanish speaker on their teams when at all possible. That tends to be our primary second language, especially for the Wasatch Front. So. Any other questions I can answer for y'all? And Amy, I got your chat, so I will respond to you. Since Eric was in this meeting and I got a chat, I was like, is it Eric? Is Eric side chatting me when I'm in my presentation? But it was Amy.
Thank you.
No, it's fine, Eric. Sometimes it's my goal, like in a meeting, to side chat people and see if I can make them smile while they're in a meeting. It's not, maybe not particularly professional, but usually they're not presenting. So it's
I did wait till you were done presenting.
No, I know you did. I didn't see it till I had all my other stuff, so you're fine.
Yeah.
One last question around kind of some of the eligibility stuff. Did you, or does that differ per site, or is it across the board what the eligibility would look like?
Like funding wise, or
No, like more like age or symptoms present, like how, I guess, what's the
it's consistent. Yeah. So the age range is that 14 to 26. There's specific guidelines on the SAMHSA side for CHRP. There's also guidelines for FEP. So there's a few things. So age, yes, but we have some flexibility. So if a young person falls into that clinical high risk category and maybe is 13, then we just talk about it and see, like, you know, usually it's going to be better to bring them into the program, figure out if it's the right fit. If it's not, we can refer them somewhere else. But I'd rather get kids services than not, right? First episode psychosis, they do have to be within that 24 months of a first episode to be eligible. So if they're past that 24 months, then we would refer to another program, just because of the goal of that first episode is to catch them within a specific time frame to provide the intervention. And clinical high risk, I mean, that one's a little trickier. We do have the structured interview for psychosis risk syndromes, which is a more in-depth screening tool to see if they fit that clinical high risk category. But again, for some of our sites, if they have the capacity and someone, you know, we do the SIPs and, you know, it's a little tricky. You use your clinical judgment, you know, confer with other clinicians, and sometimes it's hard. So sometimes we'll bring folks in and provide services and figure out, like, is this the right fit? Is it not? And then refer out if it's not. There's also the substance use issue. So for, you know, cannabis is, will, you know, cause psychosis. And sometimes when we do assessments, we will have to see, you know, have they used actively in the past 30 days? And if they have, we can't really do a solid assessment as to where the psychosis symptoms are coming from. If we can get enough kind of background information to see, like, yes, these symptoms were occurring before cannabis use kind of came into play, we can figure things out from there. So there's a few things, like, you know, because there's medically induced psychosis, there's substance use induced psychosis, there's a few pieces like that, but the teams are trained to kind of parse those out and make sure that we can assess people appropriately. But it is a little tricky for this age range with the substances, because that tends to be the time where people start using substances, right? And then that's also when these symptoms crop up, and it gets a little messy, but the teams have done a really nice job in trying to work with families as they come in so that we can get an accurate assessment of where they're at. Yeah, but it is consistent. Sorry, that was the very long way to answer your question. That yes, it's consistent. And I, as kind of the administrator over these programs, I meet with the sites on a regular basis, individually and as a group all together, so we can kind of make sure that we're all on the same page as to program expectations and all of those things. And our technical assistance provider meets with us as well to make sure that we are adhering to that coordinated specialty care model and getting the support that we need as a state.
Great.
Jessica?
Yes.
For example, right now we have these 5 places in the state. Let's say we have a patient in Summit County. The closest place to us will be Wasatch Behavioral Health in Wasatch County. If the patient has Medicaid from Summit County, for example, could they still access this program with Wasatch Behavioral Health?
We take it on kind of a case-by-case basis. We've had similar questions for, like, Tooele County to Salt Lake County. Yeah, when that happens, we generally kind of talk out, like, what's the capacity of the team to do outreach? Is telehealth an option? That's something I'm exploring as we're looking at expanding statewide. Like, how much telehealth could we do reasonably for these areas where we don't have a specific team? So the answer, I guess, is yes, and depends on the situation, but we do try to talk that out. So when we do have referrals and folks are finding programs, the teams will generally call me and be like, hey, we have this person who's reaching out to us from not our area. Can we serve them? And so we kind of talk through what their capacity is. And but I think you know, that question really speaks to that we need to expand, right? Because this incidence of early psychosis are going to happen throughout the state, and so we need options. But I am really working toward figuring out how feasible is telehealth. For Summit County, yes, it's going to be more of an option. For places like Tooele County, a little more tricky because not everybody has, you know, high-speed Wi-Fi capability or even like a solid cell phone signal. So those pieces are a little trickier. I'm trying to figure that out.
Thank you.
No problem.
Jessica. This is Angie Richens from Mentalis. Hey, I just wanted to let you know, and maybe the group know, I had a patient a bit ago that utilized the program at Wasatch Behavioral Health in Utah County. He and his family parents were thrilled with the services that they got, and so helpful, so unique to their situation, and truly they were understandably very overwhelmed with what ended up to be a pretty daunting diagnosis, and just can't say enough about what you guys do. It was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you've just reminded me that I need to add that to my presentation. Success stories and things that have worked for families. And I think that really speaks to, Angie, that it's tricky to find services, which is why I'm working on, you know, more consistent messaging and kind of marketing, for lack of a better word. But I'm reminded of this in, like, you know, I had somebody ask me a question about helping a young person not related to early psychosis, and, you know, kind of went through all of the normal things that I do. And the young person was like, yeah, I'm doing that. And I, you know, crowdsourced for my office, and I said, okay, this is the young person, this is the situation, these are the things they're accessing, what am I missing? And there were a lot of things that I was missing. And it was a good reminder that, like, I work in this field, I do this every day, and there's still things that I don't know about and still things that I struggle to figure out. And so when we look at families that are trying to figure this out, it's even more challenging, because it's like, how do you even know what to Google? Or like, when your kid is going through something that you have no idea what it is, and it's terrifying, and, you know, you're in crisis. Yeah, I think it's a really great reminder that we have to definitely be talking about all of these things more, because our families don't necessarily know where to look when you have a new thing come up for your kid that you have no idea what it is. And anybody who has parented, it's like, there's a lot of things we don't know. And it can be really challenging. So I'm really glad that people are finding the program. And I definitely want to make sure that we make it much easier to talk about and more easily accessible to folks around the state, so that they know where to look.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Well done for your team in Wasatch Behavioral Health.
Yeah, they're awesome. It's a great team there. Agreed. I will let them know.
Perfect. Thanks.
Do we have any more questions for Jessica? Before we wrap up here, Amy had to hop off the call, but she did put in the chat, hopefully everyone saw that, she said the Utah Developmental Disabilities Council is working to better understand transportation issues across the state. So they are currently doing a survey that's open, and they're hoping to get a good response from across the state, especially rural areas. So she included the link to the survey, and then also it has a flyer that goes with it that will be sure and include in our notes that go out. I was trying to open it here, but apparently my system is going to here. Let's see if I can display it. Okay, great. So this is the survey that survey flyer that could also go along with the survey. And actually we'll use that and post it on our a good plug for our UCCCN Facebook group. We'll also post it on there, probably on the medical home portal page as well, so that we can get some good responses hopefully to that also. But in saying that, just a reminder that in between the meetings, you're welcome to use that Facebook group to ask questions on specific cases or make people aware of new things or events that are happening around the state that you think would be beneficial for families of children and youth with special healthcare needs. And then we also have the email listserv, the address here. Let me put it in the chat as well, just so, sorry, I thought that would copy. That did not copy. Let me try that again. Just kidding. Michelle, will you type that in the chat for me since I can't double task? We'll put that email address. So if you email that address, that message will go to everyone that's on the listserv. If you're less comfortable doing that, let me also put my address in the chat. You can message things to me. I know some people in the past are messaging Mindy directly. So since she's no longer at the U, it would be best to reach out to me with those emails if you don't want to send it directly to the listserv. So we'll pop mine in here. And then our next meeting will be on October 18th. And then for that one, we have lined up, UPIC is going to give us a little update for what they've been working on over the last year. And then we'll also have representation from the family support centers of Ogden. So, and Michelle put her email address in there too. She is equally as capable of taking any questions from this group in between meetings. So thank you everyone so much. And we look forward to seeing you all again next month. Bye.